So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the VFR on full throttle. Full throttle. And it won't start. So what was that all about? Well, when I did my video VFR over the pit, when I was doing my oil change, I got a comment from Matty is God, I'll put it up there, asking if I did saying he did the flood clearing mode when he started the bike up after doing an oil and filter change. Now there's plenty of stuff on the internet about filling up the oil filter before you start the engine up. So you fill the filter full of oil, put the filter back on. It's a bit difficult on a bike because obviously they're usually on the side, so it would spill out. A bit easier on a car. And the idea being, and I go with it, the fact that if you have an empty oil filter, it takes longer for the oil to build up the pressure because it's got to fill that. And you get a moment, might be a couple of seconds or so, I think it's about 3 on this, before the oil light goes out. So your engine's exposed to little oil at that particular time. Now, it hasn't bothered me particularly that, and, I've no sort of strong opinion either way. It doesn't bother me too much, simply because when we start engines up from cold anyway, which we do a lot compared to your oil changes, they're starved of oil a little bit, even if it's for half a second, quarter of a second. So the fact that you starve it a bit longer for, well, I've changed the oil on this 5 times now, to me isn't a big deal. However, I hadn't known about this, as Matty put it, flood clearing mode. So what I did there was I opened up the bike full throttle, and it stops the injectors firing. I think it stops the injectors or it's sparking. I'm not sure which way, but the ECU stops it because it knows you're on full throttle. And what that allows the bike to do is to cycle through, and it allows the pressure to build up, the oil pressure to build up. So then you switch off and restart it as normal, and the oil light should go out quicker, and the oil should be up to pressure a little bit faster than normal. So although I've got no strong opinion either way, and I'm going to just reinforce that in a second, because it's so easy to do, I may well do that in future. Why not? I'll usually do stuff that are debatable if there's no downside to it. And I can't really see a downside of putting my ignition on, holding the throttle wide open and the engine turning over. There's no real downside to it. You could really, really argue and say, well, even with the starter motor spinning, it's spinning at 200, 250 revs. So it's still, it's still starving of oil even at that low revs. Obviously not as fast as 1,000 or 1,200, whatever it ticks over at. But I think, well, I can't see a disadvantage to it, so I may well do that next time. But again, if you feel it's not necessary, I certainly understand that. I mean, let me recap on that. I've changed the oil on this 5 times. I started off from cold, I don't know, semi-cold, 100 times a season. I don't know, but it's a lot. So even in them very short cold starts, there is a delay in pressure building up, and there will be wear at that point. In the same way, there'll be a little tiny bit of wear starting it up with an empty oil filter. But the differential is one's happening lots and lots and lots and lots of times, but the oil pressure, the oil filter change one is only happening, every time you do an oil change. So it's not a big deal for me, but I am going to, I probably will do that on my next oil change. So just to prove the point about the oil pressure being low even on a cold start, I've just took a couple of videos on at the end of this, and you'll see me starting it up. That was today, just before I did this. Started it up from cold. You'll see a slight delay, maybe a second, and then I'll start from warm, and it might be, it's almost instant, half a second or so. So if you feel you want to use that mode after you've done an oil change, why not? And I thank Matty. I don't know what his name is. I should have had a look to see if he put a name on there. Yeah, thank him for bringing that up, because I couldn't really reply fully in a comment because comments obviously aren't. You know, if you make them too long, people stop reading them. So that's just my little take on it, and I hope you've learned something. I've learned something. I really didn't know that the ECU would cut the power or cut the injectors when you held it at full throttle. Good safety measure, I guess, but I've learned something there. So, yeah, every day's a school day, as they say. Okay, I'll tag these videos on now. Catch you later. Bye.